My name is Jurian the Cocq van Delwijnen. I work for Sogeti, and I've been on an assignment at Philips for about 3.5 years almost. Yeah, a little something about me on screen, but let's just kick it off. I have a suggested agenda. I put that explicitly on there. If you guys have questions, want to take a little sidestep, want to know something, just raise your hand, shout my name. Well, yeah, I'll make sure that we'll address it. But first, a little introduction to Philips Hue. So, are you guys aware of the product? Do you guys have it at home? Yeah, let's see some hands. Now, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It makes me proud again. So, for the people that don't know, Philips Hue is the biggest IoT supplier in the world right now. Connected lighting, of course. We offer all kinds of open platforms, so we see a lot of third-party apps. I have some examples of that as well. You have so many different ways of controlling everything. I've just put up some of the official ones. I think the bottom one will make a lot of people very happy, since we're going to introduce wall switches soon. But a little background. So a couple of years ago, we had the V1 app that was all managed by Sogeti. The V2 app came up, which was also completely done by Sogeti initially. We grew that, and soon we'll launch the V3 app, which I brought a demo for. So it's a complete redesign of the project of the app. We'll launch it in spring of this year. And I brought it for you guys to give it a shot. It's all development, so you are going to see bugs, you are going to see strange things, but I think I've already had some people in the room that I showed it to that were really happy with it. So I'm excited to show you guys. For the people that don't know, you have the bridge in the center of this image. This is the central hub of your Hue ecosystem. And on the left side, I have drawn the app. So this is the V2 app. It's made up out of 3 layers. It's the SDK by Philips, and then in red it's the parts that Sogeti manages, which is the application layer and then the UI layer. And a fun thing about the lights is that a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of software running in them as well, and these all communicate via the bridge via the Zigbee protocol that I mentioned before. Well, it's all open to use. You can just link to your bridge yourself. You have all these different types of resources you can address, and we're seeing a lot of third-party developers that do cool stuff with that. So this is of a video game, and this inspired us as Philips Hue to make some changes to the platform. So what you'll see here is a game on a 2D plane. It's called Jurian. You drive in caves, and of course if you go deeper underground, your lights dim, stuff is happening on screen, your lights go with it, and this was all based on the Clip API. And Zigbee could deal with only a couple of commands, I would almost say per minute. If you compare that to a frame rate of a game, for example, that's way out of its league. It was definitely just not designed for that. So what we did is we opened the protocol up, we made a lot of changes, and now we've implemented a way where, for example in this case, games can send updates of about 30 to 40 frames per second to the lights via a streaming API. And that's what led to the entertainment release of a couple of months ago. And that we're excited for to see in the field that people actually start using it. So that was just Hue as a product. Now let's get into the history of it. Anybody, something that wants to still is unclear?
Just very quickly, the V3 version, did you rewrite it from scratch, or is it just an evolution of the V2?
So the question was if the V3 app was rewritten from scratch, and it was not. No. So we took the V2 as a base, and then we took the user interaction. So a lot of core features were just not found. So we monitor the analytics on the flow through the app, and a lot of the core features, I already heard it tonight as well, someone said, yeah, I didn't know about the color picking in the V2 app, so I just used the V1 app. And we all made sure to really make those easily accessible because it's a core use case. And yeah, we just made mistakes there if people could not even find setting colors to your lights. That's almost unthinkable for us to have launched that way. But yeah, I'll get into some of the design stuff as well later. So let's take a step back. So when I joined the project, we were just a small group. We had 3 developers. We were just making stuff happen, trying things left, right, and center. In the V1 app, it was also kind of, yeah, the code was not too nice. Let's put it that way. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Yeah, if that just grows that way. And then it was time to start over. For the V2 app, we did actually start from scratch. And we even used a different base. The SDK that I mentioned was also completely written with the V2 app in mind. And of course, opening it up to other sources to also use that SDK. And from there, we started growing and growing and growing. We had design in the team, test, of course, and then just some developers. And what we noticed, and I think most of the people here will also have worked in Scrum teams, that if you grow too big, then it will start grinding and slowing down. So then we split up into 2 app teams, an iOS team and an Android team. And even later on, we even split off a 3rd team, which was the design. No, the design was completely separate. Test automation, sorry. So we split up into the iOS team, the Android team, and the test automation team. So we went from this coherent group into about 30 people running around in all kinds of teams with in the end their own agendas. So we tried to keep the product owner sane. But yeah, of course, we had to have the same person since the 2 apps still had to be very similar. And based on that, we just to draw a little situation for you guys. So in the center, that's the app team. So we went from 6 people into 30 on our own, and then surrounding that, all these teams as stakeholders for us, which was a nice change of pace, if you will. But then we get to delivering software in a typical hardware company. I'm not too sure if you guys have experience with that at all, but hardware gets to the shelves about 2 times a year. And yeah, everything revolves around that, especially at Philips, which is classically just dumb bulbs, shipping them as much as possible, just in bulk, which leads you to a lot of challenges as a development team. So one of these examples is Q42 did a lot of work for us on the motion sensor, and I see someone nodding there. Are you from Q42?
My neighbors.
Ah, that one?
Yeah, they're over here.
Ah, cool. Did you work on the app as well, actually?
I did.
Yeah? Should I take a step back, or is that... are we good? No, so what we saw is we had a very strict deadline. So in the hardware world, it's a specific set of features that are promised on the box. That's how Philips taught as well. And we had a specific deadline because we had to make the hardware release window. And then for the motion sensor, for example, was when we were in doubt if we were going to make it or not. And then as Philips, they immediately want to de-risk that. Well, they took on Q42. They implemented the motion sensor separately as a module. And then you integrate that, we integrated that back into the code again. And that's all stuff to keep in mind for in a hardware company. That, it's not uncommon to have extra suppliers for that. We have seen that right now again with the complete redesign, where this time a Belgian company called iCaps that pulled it in, did the redesign of the UI, and now that's being merged in. Yeah, those are just two examples. But as I mentioned, hardware is really embedded into the core of the system. So when we were initially going to launch the V2 app, everything was in a mode of, okay, this needs to be in at this specific time. Yeah, make it happen. And as a team, there's Philips Hue is quite a complex ecosystem. So as a team, it's difficult to onboard people for some extra manpower for 2 months, for example, since there's quite a big leeway there. So as the hardware company Philips is, we did a lot of overtime at the start. We were working on it, and then as another example, I already discussed with someone here today as well, is that the third-party light bulbs were not supported by the Hue bridge anymore. Just the bridge team launched that, and people online did not like it too much. They were not a big fan of that. So what happened was that even after all that overtime, then we got at the afternoon that we were gonna launch it, we got a call from one of the higher ups. It was like, yeah, we decided that with all this negativity in the press right now about these third-party lights, let's not ship it right now. The app deserves better. So I think some people here can relate. But yeah, those are things to keep in mind. So since then we've drawn a line for ourselves, and now we're coaching the organization more and more to get that in.
And questions at the end, or
no, of course, go ahead.
So Philips actually listens to illegal devices on their Hue bridge and thinks it's very important. So basically opening up more to the world, which is weird for them. So is it new policy, or you can't say anything about it, of course? But
what do you mean with that?
Well, they have their Hue system, they have the Hue bridge, and then someone with a Xiaomi light wants to connect to the Hue bridge. They hacked it together. I think the IKEA lights also work on the Hue bridge. Yeah. But then it doesn't work. They complain because their hack doesn't work, and then Philips thinks, oh, maybe we should help them. Our competitors.
Okay, now
from a corporate standpoint, completely weird.
No, so it's not exactly that. So I'll repeat the question first. So the question is, why does so to summarize it, it's like Philips gets their competitors' lights that they added to the bridge, and when Philips disables the support, they complain. And why would Philips respond to that? And it's actually not the case that it's some hack or some illegal tinkering towards the bridge. It's all based on the Zigbee standard, and as long as these devices conform to the Zigbee standard, then they are open to join the network. So these bulbs, they form a mesh network, which is just some standard Zigbee thing. That means also if I have my bridge here, a light here, and I would not be able to reach it because it's too far away, and I put a light in between that it hops, and then it can make it. But as long as all these bulbs just conform to that specific protocol, then everything should just work, and that's a big if. Like if they do that, and what back then when it was disabled, what we saw was that these bulbs, these third-party bulbs, they did not have the same user experience. So where stuff from the according to the protocol would fade away nicely, we would see third-party bulbs like go off immediately. And then if you have two bulbs next to each other in your room, you see a fade and an off, which is very strange. And that's why it was decided back then to drop the support basically for the protocol, and that's what caused the uproar. And then, it was reversed quite quickly after that.
Okay, so now the light bulbs go out immediately, but now the customer knows it's the light bulb and not the bridge.
Basically, yeah. So at least they can control them from one source again, which is the Philips Hue bridge. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, like I mentioned, it was very important for us to coach the organization on all levels, and we did that. and I heard you were relating to this, so I would definitely recommend this, having continuous insights into basically everything. So on the left side, I think, if it's big enough, then you see a build monitor, which I think a lot of you will be familiar with. This is just hooked to a Jenkins instance. But on the right, there's a big TV screen in the center of the room, with on the left side the iOS statistics, on the right side the Android statistics, and on there we'll just have open bugs, bugs fixed, all kind of stuff like velocity, and just keep comparing the same numbers, so that all the stakeholders have insights into, okay, this is what we can at least expect, and this is what they're doing, instead of it just being this black box, which helped us a lot coaching the Philips organization. So I want to go into a little bit of the architecture as well. I think we already saw some code tonight. I think a lot of you are developers as well. Most of the people that I spoke to so far. But we started with a nice MVC architecture, which I think officially does not stand for this, but this is what it turned out to be for us. And we had a lot of trouble with that. We do test-driven development. Right now we have about 11,000 unit tests so far, and if you run into mocking problems like I mentioned here, that's a lot of extra work. So we decided to shift that around a little bit. So now we have the biggest parts of the app. So this is all refactoring, of course, backwards. So still not everything is over to this, even at this stage. But we're using the view ones right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Does it mean that only later on you started test-driven development, or from the start?
No. So the question was if we started with test-driven development or not. We did start with test-driven development, but what we saw is that if we use mocking, we use a mocking framework. It was all in Objective-C, which is called OC Mojito, and it was possible just to make sure that the mocks are on the right place at the right time. But it just took some extra effort. When we as a team were not mature enough to realize, like, okay, this should end and we should just fix it properly. So we just continue with that at the start. We had to make that 2.0 deadline. Doing overtime, there was not a lot of time to say, okay, let's rethink the architecture right now. And afterwards, once that was done, and we went into a cycle of releasing a monthly update, then we were putting in some more and more time to move into this view model architecture. But it was definitely possible, but it was just harder to mock, basically.
And you switched to Swift, I guess, at some point, or?
Yes, we did switch to Swift, but that was a lot later again, and that's a whole different approach as well. Again, since then with mocking.
Mocks are not really possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now so let's just it's like two parts of the slide further. So basically getting back to these view models, as I mentioned, it grew and grew and grew and grew. It was all in the same app, which led to these results. So if we take the unit testing into that with all of those unit tests, not all of them were clean. There was some UI loading in there as well. We were talking about a 25-minute suite, and with a UI testing suite that was about 18 hours, which results in some trouble, as you can imagine, especially if I'll get to the branching strategy later. But basically, we test everything before we go into develop. That just slows you down. But that's why we went to a modular approach. We have different parts of the app in the redesign. We have the banner, for example, which should not be linked to the Hue app. We should be able to use that banner in all apps. So we went to that, and that's also when we started introducing modules. We also started working with Swift a lot more. So we had it in some places. and there we use the quick and nimble frameworks to spec out the tests, and then we write mocks based on protocols. So we define a protocol, we have the actual class implementation that implements that, and then we write a mock class which implements setting a property to true when a method is called, for example, or have a counter setting that to 1 to 2. And then in the test case we insert one of those mocks, and then based on that protocol we just call the protocol, and then the counter gets higher and you can check on the counter. So that's how we move away from mocking. Yeah, cool. When it comes to the process itself, yeah, I think most of the people here will know the Scrum process, which we apply in the team. A couple of cool things to know is that Philips, they use SAFe to align all the different teams, and that's why we have a PI event, a product increment event, where we just get together with all the teams for 2 days. Every team for themselves makes a planning for 8 weeks or 4 sprints, and then they make a list of all the dependencies to the other teams. And since you're all together, all the teams get together, shake hands. Okay, this is what we're going to do for you. This is what needs to fall out. And then, as an entire organization, we know what we're going to do for 8 weeks. And another nice thing is that we have some design critique sessions. So yeah, like I already mentioned, for the V2 app, a lot of people were not able to find some of the parts. So it was back then it was not too well implemented, but right now it looks like this. So these designers, they come with a mock-up that as developers we just critique that, get product management in there, continue with looking it up, and then it will will undergo a user test, which for 2.0 we did not have in place yet. So just let's continue on the development, of course.
What do you use for prototyping?
For prototyping, so the development tool. Now I need to remember the name.
InVision.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had to think of it. Yeah, but for the people that don't know, they just design screens in there. They can port that, and then InVision loads it up into either a web view or even a real app. That if you tap it, it highlights in blue what elements you can use, and then you can just click through it, and you get a simulated feel of what it's what at least going to look like.
The design review are just made with internally or with external customers?
So so up top, the critique is all internal, and then once they have a idea of what it's going to look like and what it's going to need to do, then it gets user tested with just random people from specific groups, like people that are hardcore users with more than 30 lights, and people that have never used the app before, to see how those stack up. So when it comes to development, we have 2 things that I'd like to recommend to you guys, which is called what we call a battle plan. And if you read the Scrum guide, it's actually part 2 of the sprint planning, but basically we just get together with all the developers for an hour, sit together, make some architectural designs, assign user stories to people, have them come up with a proposal, and then as a development team we review them, and we all know what we're going to do and what we want. So that's that's quite a nice thing there. Yeah, and test-driven development, as is on screen right now, that's been invaluable to us. Like I mentioned, with 11,000 unit tests in all different kind of components, is we would not want to do that by hand every time.
Question: you were saying that you were doing modular development.
Yeah.
Do you have like a mono repo, or do you have like a repository for each module?
So the question was how we structure that right now. and that is we use a dependency manager. We have a separate repos, and then have the cartridge dependency manager to handle the updating dependencies for us.
And Jenkins is set up for each repository separated?
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah. Cool. Then once we've developed that, we get into a beta program. This is a program for spread out for all over the world, about 14 days from where we say this is probably fine to actually putting it live. And as you can imagine, with all the different world setups, it has saved us a couple of times as well. So once this gets approved, and then we can ship it. I think.
Sorry, how did you set up that external group? It is an external group?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a central point which is called center code. That's a place where the people with accounts, with beta accounts, can go to, and they get enrolled for specific programs. For example, like I mentioned the motion sensor before, back then, right now there's going to be a beta for the 3.0 design. People get enrolled into that, and then we'll just use test flight to spread the actual build to these customers, and in center code they can provide all the feedback, which then gets ported to our Jira. We used the following test strategy / branching model. It's a classical promotional model where, the lower you go, the less stable it is. The higher you go, the more stable it is. With, of course, as an exception, the hotfix. We have this stable branch. We branch from there. We start applying all the fixes on there, maybe a new feature, and then we make pull requests to go back. And like I mentioned, if you have a unit test suite of about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on the traffic on the CI, and if the UI test take about 20 hours, then this is then the merging stuff back gets cumbersome. So that's also a big driver why we chose to change up that model. And then basically once you reach stable, it's ready for release after some short testing. So we always have something that we could potentially ship at that stage. Anytime the product owner would say, I want to make a release right now, we would be ready for that. And just to give some insights into what these UI tests would look like. We've used Calabash for a very long time. And that would just run on the phones you can see on the right. You would actually see fingers, taps appear on the screen all the time. Just go through the app, all the different type of scenarios. And then based on that, if there would failure would be detected, then we'll post a nice screenshot and at exactly what step went wrong, which is quite handy. It just rolls out a little report like this, which was also really helpful to our stakeholders. We don't use Calabash anymore. They're going to drop support even, but I still wanted to show you guys this dashboard, since in the current tool we have some results in there that I can show. So that's why I took this one. Yeah.
2 questions.
Go ahead.
So you already found a replacement? Because I assume that Calabash was also used for the Android.
Yes, that's correct.
And the second one, so if I change the color to pink on the iPhone, is it also the color checked of the light that it's also changing into pink?
Yeah. So
you sort of have a hardware test saying, oh, this light indeed turns on at that level.
Yeah. Cool. So the first question was if we found a replacement for Calabash, and that we have. So all the tests were written in Gherkin, in the Gherkin syntax, and on Android we've written a parser to change that to Espresso, and to use that. And on the iOS side we're using We're using GIF right now, keep it functional, which also can interpret those steps. And for the second question, there's an SDK that we use, and that just sends HTTP requests to the bridge, and we just check those requests. So we don't check it on actual lights. In the end, it does go to D-lights, and we also check the bridge from the bridge response that gets handled well. I've been talking too much. Shit.
Have a beer.
Yeah, I'm trying to water my throat, but yeah. So we do test that, but mostly based on the HTTP requests that go out and come in. Yeah, same here. Just more insights, coaching the organization, and that's the same with data analytics. So we use a crash logging in Flurry, crash logging in Flurry, and we're moving to Amplitude for the data logging right now. Or I say Flurry. That's the analytics. That's moving to Amplitude. For crash logging, we use Hockey app, and just to get some insights there. And that's basically it. As much as I had to say. I think Armin liked it a lot that I put this up. But yeah, feel free to get in touch with me if you have any questions about Sogeti. Just yeah, get in touch. I like that. Let's connect. If there are any more questions about right now?
Yeah. So you said the release date of the new app would be spring this year.
Yes.
So that should be
Soon.
Is there
Yes.
a specific date or?
Yeah. No, I'm not allowed to say that. It's spring.
I already asked.
I did bring a demo version. You can try.
Is there a general strategy you're using to inject the dependencies, or for instance the mocks when it's needed?
The question is.
Like property injection or constructor injection, or
Yeah.
other ways?
Yeah. So the question is how we inject the mocks in the new way, and that is just via the constructor, ideally. It's not always possible. Sometimes we use lazy loading just to for the property in the class, and then before it gets lazily loaded, we override it with a setter. But mostly we do it in the constructor.
How do you manage in your development team signing identities, signing profiles and certificates? Because you said 30 developers, right?
A good question. So the question was how we manage signing. We have them in the repository, and we have a fast lane step to apply them.
Fastlane match?
Sorry?
Is it fastlane match?
Not too sure. So we do use Fastlane, but I'm not sure what the implementation is.
Yeah, that's probably match.
Yeah. No.
Thank you.